What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another week and another episode of Unscripted, where we're bringing you professionals from all walks of life, touching their backstory, their mindset, and how they navigate through adversity and opposition. As always, I'm your host, Akeem Haynes. Before we get into this week's episode of the show, do us a huge favor. Head to Apple Podcasts, Apple iTunes, Spotify, Chartable.com, and leave a rating and review of the show. This small act goes a long way in moving the podcast forward. We appreciate you for taking the time. It truly means a lot to us. Now, this week on the show, he's a 9-time world medalist, including 2 silver medals at the Olympics in the 110-meter hurdles, 2-time world indoor champion in the 60-meter hurdles. And he gets busy in the 100 as well, too. And the 60 is the real deal. You know, he used to compete in his own clothing brand. He's an entrepreneur, sprinter, and hurdles coach. And as of 2021, he was inducted into the USATF Hall of Fame. Talking about Terrence Trammell stops by the show. I had heard a lot of great things about Terrence. Each episode, I try and think of a word that resonates with the person. And as I was listening to this episode back, editing it, the word that kept coming to mind and kept coming to thought was integrity. In this episode, we touch on his upbringing, the culture and shifts in Atlanta in the 90s, the promise he made to himself and his brother after watching the 1996 Olympic Games right there in his hometown in Atlanta, why he picked the University of South Carolina and the transition to the collegiate ranks, how he dealt with pressure on and off the track, the importance of support and brotherhood he cultivated with his Omega Sci-Fi family. Shout out to all the Omega men out there. His collegiate experiences and his Olympic experiences, what it was like competing on the circuit with some of the best in the event, in the discipline, such as Alan Johnson, Li Zhang, and Nir Garcia, and so many others. And how being inducted into the USATF Hall of Fame wasn't just about him, and so many more great stories in between. Look, if you've been following Terrence's career and you're wondering what has he been doing, what has he been up to, then this is going to give you some insight into those things, but also reminiscing about all of the lessons that he learned along the way and just the journey of where he started to where he is today. So without further ado, enjoy this week's episode with Terrence Trammell. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to the show on your favorite audio podcast platforms and on YouTube. And if there is a guest that you would like to see on the show, DM us on social media at Underdog AKH. That's mine. The Unscripted social media is Unscripted with a K. Let us know in the comment section as well on YouTube, and we will do our best to try and get those guests on the show. We want to continue to serve you in the best capacity that we can. So without further ado, enjoy this week's episode, Terrence Trammell.
Hey, what's up, Akeem? How you doing?
I'm well, man. How you doing today? How's everything on your end?
Pretty good, kind of non-stop, but you know, that's the way it is.
Well, man, I appreciate your time, man. I want to be respectful of it. I want to get you out of here I know you're doing coaching right now as well, too, and a lot of things happening, I'm sure. But man, I want to start here, man. I'm big on gratitude. I believe it's a great way to start the day. I believe it's a great way to finish the day. So I want to ask you today, Terrence, what are 3 things you're grateful for today, man?
Thankful to be alive, first and foremost.
Come on now.
Grateful to have, you know, my health and my strength and a sound mind, and my daughter, you know, so definitely grateful for those 3 things. Those are the first 3 things that come to mind, but the list is a lot longer.
Man, I'm looking forward to our conversation today, man. A couple people have hit me up and said, man, you got to try and get Terrence on the show. I said, we're going to see what we can do. So, man, I want to start here, man. Originally from Decatur, Georgia, right? Georgia is a hot place. A lot of culture, a lot of things happening there. But what was it like growing up during that time, during that era for you? Not maybe just on the track but just at the time, what was the dynamics like? What was some of the things that you were growing up environment-wise?
So environment-wise, there were several different things. As far as the the need or the desire to be great. That was really huge within my school dynamic. Southwest DeKalb High School, which we affectionately call the University of Southwest DeKalb. We claim that to be an HBCU in itself. When you walk in those four walls, you just have a sense of a major culture of greatness, whether it's winning on the field of play or just in academics. The band has been phenomenal. So in all facets, and it was the era that I came up in, we almost took it for granted because it was a daily thing. Everybody was showing that they were the best. You know, it was a competition thing, and it was one of those things where everybody just had this air about them that they were great, that greatness was around. So not only that, but understanding that Atlanta in general was the central point of the civil rights movement and all of the things that went on with Dr. King. And in the 90s, music really took off in Atlanta. Well, the culture, I mean, because we always had it, like we always knew it, but the culture finally went mainstream, I think, in the 90s. And so that was an era where everybody got to really see Atlanta for Atlanta. Then you had the 96 Olympic Games. And I think that's when the world saw Atlanta, and it hadn't been the same since. So growing up in that era, I mean, if I could do it all over again, I would. I mean, it was a great time to be young, great time to be active, and just doing what we were doing.
Sometimes, experiences can teach us lessons, or maybe we learn something from our community, or maybe our parents instill something in us that sticks with us today. Maybe a life lesson, maybe it's something that they say that we don't quite understand until 20 years later. We're like, okay, that makes sense. Was there something like that for you at that age that stuck with you? Maybe your parents said it, a teacher said it, or you just learned it directly or indirectly. Was there something that you still carry to this day?
My dad would always say things like plan your work and work your plan. And as easy as that sounds, I mean, corporations are built just off of that saying alone. You know, when you plan things out, when you make a roadmap and you just follow those things, yeah, there'll be, bumps in the road and that sort of thing. But at the same time, you have it mapped out, you know where you're going. I don't see people using their GPS and well, they don't get lost too frequently.
Yeah.
But that was one. And my mom would always just say, she had this little saying where, you keep sucking until you succeed, and that was like one of her thing. And my high school coach, my track coach, Napoleon Cobb would always say it's not the will to win, but the will to prepare to win. So, in this culture where everyone has been so asphyxiated with the destination, it's truly the journey that makes you who you are. And the things that come along with the destination are just byproducts of who you've become during the journey.
You spoke about the 96 Olympics, right? Exciting time, obviously. But you also spoke about the culture of Atlanta and having the games right there in America as well, too. You spoke about Southwest DeKalb, and, in 1997, you were the high school athlete of the year. But when you were in high school and you saw the games, right, what was going through your head at that time? Was it ever a thought of like, man, I could be there, this is something that I could do? Or was it just something like, man, this is cool, but it was just kind of left that? What went through your head when you saw that?
That was the defining moment. That I would say that moment was the beginning of my Olympic journey. Because I played football and
what position?
State. So I started out at receiver, and then I moved over to free safety.
Now, Terrence, let me ask you this, right? I play football myself. I've been talking to a lot of other athletes, and they all say that they're nice, right? But we are in our own biasness. Now, Terrence, were you nice? Now,
I was all state.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I was all state. As a matter of fact, I got more letters in football than I did in track, believe it or not.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Okay.
yeah. And then up until last year I coached football. So, it's truly football is my first love, so I put everything into that. But going back to 96, my brother and I actually had the opportunity to go down and watch the games. And that experience in itself was life changing. I mean, when they talk about kids being able to get exposure to see what they could one day become, that's a prime example. Now, let me tell you what I witnessed on that evening.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I saw Gail Devers run, I think it was the prelims and the quarterfinals of the women's 100-meter hurdles. I saw Marie-Jose Perec win the 400 meters that day. I saw Michael Johnson win the 400 that day. I also saw Carl Lewis win the long jump that day.
Wow.
And then Alan Johnson broke the Olympic record that day in the 110s. And I was talking to a middle school a couple of weeks ago, and I was telling them the difference between how things are and how things were at that time. At that time, there weren't really cell phones like that. So everybody had the cameras, the disposable cameras or
Yeah.
the camera. And you could see the flash bulbs go around like flickers, as these stars were going around the track. And it was amazing. And to witness basically a stadium full of the world's dynamic and culture, people from all different nationalities and backgrounds, all convening in one place, cheering for their favorite athletes. I mean, it was nothing like it. And when the athletes were down in the blocks to get prepared to start, I mean, you could literally hear a pin drop. And we're talking about tens of thousands, if not quite 100,000 people in the stands. And at that point, I told my older brother, in 4 years, that's where I want to be, and there's something about speaking things into existence and working toward that, so that's what started it.
Where did that belief come from right away, Terrence? Because sometimes people say certain things, right? They're like, yeah, I want to be that in 4 years. And then the next year may not go their way, and the next year may not go their way. And it starts to dwindle, right? When we speak certain things, life is going to force us to double down, and we have to truly trust our faith and our words to be able to get there. But where does that internal confidence come from you? Was it something that was instilled in you early?
So yeah, that comes from my faith. Growing up in the church, being around my grandparents growing up over the summers. I went to church a lot with them, and big faith-based family. So that was instilled early on. And it was one of those things where if I really just hold on to that imagination or hold on to that thought and put the energy and emotion behind it,
Mm-hmm.
it kind of leads the way. My brother used to always tell me to follow the script, because and I really believe that, once you have something in you, I mean, it's downloaded, it gets downloaded into you, and the journey starts to open itself up as you continue to pursue it. And so I was going into my senior year in high school when the 96 Olympics came. So I had another season of football, but I knew kind of at that point, I didn't think that was going to be the end of my football career. I thought I was just going to put it on hold for a few years, and come back. And so everything that I did was based around me being the best like track athlete I could be at the time. And so I set out for national records. I set out to be national champion, a lot of things like that. Like I wanted to be like one of the top guys in track and field in high school. And so just being able to keep that ingrained and working toward that, I was fortunate enough for that to happen.
You obviously had a great high school career, Terrence, but the transition from high school to college, you went to South Carolina. Loaded question. Why did you pick South Carolina? How is that process like? Because, whenever I go speak in school or as I mentor young athletes, I always tell them too, you got to fall in love with the program, not necessarily the school, because sometimes you go to a big school and you're like, man, this is going to be great, but the program may not be for you and you're going to be there kind of miserable, right? So how did you pick South Carolina? What was the process behind that?
Okay, so going back to the faith-based foundation, I was bombarded with schools at the time, which was a great situation to have. Let me just say that. But I was overwhelmed. And at the time, my pastor gave me 3 scriptures to read. He said, you read these 3 scriptures when you are trying to make a huge decision. And so I read those 3 scriptures for the 7 days. He said, if you didn't get it in the first 7, do another 7. And so that's what I did. So South Carolina was really high on my radar for several reasons. One, the world and Olympic champion used South Carolina as his training ground, which was Allen Johnson. And his coach was now the head coach at the University of South Carolina, which was Curtis Fry. Not only that, but where I spent all my summers and holidays growing up as a kid in South Carolina was maybe an hour away. So I knew I had family that was close. And so when it all came down to it, it was just one night on my 18th birthday. I went out with my brother and we were just kind of sitting around. We were at the, I think it was a TGI Friday, and just kind of at the bar, just kind of watching the games and stuff. And oddly enough, the bartender was an alum of UNC Chapel Hill, who ran for Coach Fry. And so we took that as the sign that, okay, well, this is it. Like this, it kind of came out of nowhere, so to speak, but that's what it was. And so at the time, Carolina was a big throw school. Had several Olympians that were throwers from the university. And so I felt like, based on the conversations I had with Coach Fry, that I could kind of help turn the culture around from a sprinter's perspective. And so that's exactly what we did. From my 12th grade year in high school, USC finished, I think, 40th at the NCAA championship. And my freshman year, we were 11th. And we were constantly top 10. I think we maxed out at like number 4 one year at the NCAA championships. And so from there, it just kind of blossomed into a major contender every year from a track perspective. And the women's track team actually became the first national championship team in school history. And so I like to think that being able to have someone like me early on helped draw some other talent there that they could do that with. So,
man, it is so funny you say that. Where you went there, you said you would kind of shifted the culture. I remember when I was at my junior college, Barton Community College, and I was getting ready to pick my next school. I had signed to go to Florida State to play football and run track out of high school. But one of the maths that I took in the 9th grade, the NCAA didn't accept anymore. So I was ineligible. So I went to junior college, and my second year, I was like, man, I felt conflicted because I'm like, man, Florida State at the time, Coach Kent Harden, always got love for him. He always stuck by me. But in my heart, I was like, God, I don't know what to do, because I feel like if I go to Alabama, I'll change the culture. But if I go to Florida State, I feel like I would just be another number.
Right.
And I remember praying one time, and I was like, God, what do I do? And It was one of those ones where the scripture in Proverbs says, lean not on your own understanding. And I was like, okay, I don't understand why I feel conflicted, but I must feel conflicted for a reason. Yeah. So I went to Alabama, and exactly what you said, they were ranked maybe 60 something in the season before. But when we got there, we moved up to number 10. Right. Mm-hmm. And then we went to number 9, and then we were second in NCAAs in the 4x1. So all of these things came in, transpired, and worked out. What was the transition like for you, right? Because now you're adjusting to the school, you're adjusting to more people, you're adjusting to, who is Terrence Tramell off the track? What other interests do you have away? What was that time like for you, trying to balance everything accordingly and just trying to figure out who you are as a young man?
So my situation was kind of unique because at the time, the clearinghouse thing was kind of new. And so I qualified, I think, for the clearinghouse, I want to say in April of my senior year in high school. Yeah. We had to get the paperwork in, and it sat on someone's desk for 2 or 3 weeks. Don't know who that person was. So I missed the drop ad date by, I want to say, 3 days. So I was in Carolina, but I had to work. So I had to work, and one of the seniors on the team had an apartment, and his roommate was his teammate from football. And so I slept on their couch. So I went to work, slept on their couch, paid a third of the rent. And I actually trained with the open athletes because I couldn't train with the team.
Because you had to work.
Right. Well, I couldn't train with the team at the time because it was an infraction. It would have been an infraction.
Got it.
So what looked to be somewhat bleak was actually a blessing because I get to train with Alan Johnson fresh out of the gate. And we had Melissa Morrison and Tony McCall and Monique Hennigan was down at the time. And a lot of these athletes were Coach Fry's athletes at North Carolina. And so that gave me an early opportunity to kind of see how I would perform, as an athlete, as a young athlete. And then in the spring of '98 is when I finally enrolled in school. And so for me to enroll in school during track season was a heck of a transition because, you have, and I was taking 15 hours, so
you had a full schedule.
Right. And so, there will be a week where you have like 5 exams.
Yeah.
And so, oh my gosh, it was crazy. But I really was fortunate to have a high school coaches. My high school football coach is a legend in this area as well, for getting guys scholarships on teams that we actually played against. He was big on that. And so my upbringing was really good. So I didn't lack confidence. I did not lack confidence or determination or drive or anything like that. And that was one of the things that I think really prevailed as I matriculated through the University of South Carolina, because it just gave me an unrelenting will to be successful. And, just being completely transparent, I didn't have much to come home to. I mean, like my dad was dealing with disability at the time, and my mom had been working for like 22 years at a hospital, and then they had new management. So she got laid off. When they bring new management, they bring in their people. So it was a struggle. So I had to do it. Like they said, I burned the boats. So that was basically my approach. And so it took a little while to get accustomed to certain things. But I want to say after my second semester, so the fall of '98, I think I was fully acclimated. I understood what was required and what I needed to do. And I just continued to press forward.
Did you ever feel maybe like heaviness on your shoulders, right? You just talked about your dad having some disabilities and then your mom getting laid off. Like that can play on a person's mental psyche, because then it starts to feel like, practice may not seem fun. It may seem like, look, this is a way out and this needs to work, right? Did you ever feel that heaviness on your shoulder of like, man, how am I going to balance all this? And what kept you grounded?
So I did feel like this was the way out. Like this has got to work. And still in the back of my mind,
Yeah.
football wasn't totally out of the picture. So if this doesn't work, I can
I'm gonna
walk
go over
on.
here. Yeah.
Right. So, um, so I don't feel like I don't feel as if it was going to be a complete bust if track didn't work out. But this was my primary reason. I mean, outside of the education, to be at the University of South Carolina. And one thing that I did not do that a lot of my teammates, I didn't go out a lot. I didn't drink. Like drinking has never really appealed to me just because it just tastes bad. I'm
That's
expecting
what I say.
right. And I didn't stand around and judge people for drinking or say you shouldn't do it. Like, no, do what you're gonna do. But understand now you're gonna pay the taxes on everything that you do. So make sure that you're ready for practice, make sure that you're ready for the meet. And that's how I've always looked at people enjoying themselves. I mean, that was just my choice not to do that. I wasn't against it, but I was really I was extremely focused. It was almost like the pattern I was on. It was almost as if I couldn't fail.
Mm,
So at times there was heaviness, there was I was overwhelmed at times, but I think that's a part of growing up. And I also think that by me not being coddled growing up
yeah.
helped me to kind of lean back on some of those times to say, okay, I can get through it. I just don't know how.
Mhm.
But I made it through it because, we're here talking about it now. So I understood what it was like not to have. So if there was something that I didn't have, I didn't miss it,
Mm,
uh, and
that's
just kind
good.
of created it later on.
It's again, it's so funny that you say that because it's like, you're explaining what I did as well too. I didn't really go out too much because I was like, yo, this plan has to work. like it
Right.
has to go this way. And I was completely okay with that. I always encourage my teammates. I'm like, no, you guys go out, you go and have fun, right? Let me know when you get there. But I'm just, I got to do some other things. I was already at a disadvantage. I needed to make sure I get all the advantage that I could get. But one thing I found interesting, Terrence, was you're also a mega sci-fi man, right?
That's right.
Walk me through that, man. Why did you pick? Why did you pick there? What was that transition like? What moved you towards that?
So a lot of guys that were influential in my life as a kid were Omega men. My high school football coach that I just talked about. Several of the deacons at my church and at my grandmother's church were Omega men, and my brother definitely wanted to become one. And we're 9 years apart, so basically, whatever he did, I wanted to do as well.
Yeah,
And so,
I get
and
it.
so that was pretty much it. I just felt like from what I knew of the men in my life that had the biggest influence. Um, if I was going to do anything involved with the National Pen Hill, it was going to be that. It wasn't going to be anything else. And so I got invited by one of the upperclassmen on my team um, to join his fraternity. And I told him flat out, I said, hey, man, I see what you guys are doing, right now. Y'all are really, doing your thing on the yard and that whole thing. But I was like, it's only one way I'm going. And if the chapter is not on the yard while I'm here, then I'm doing that grad chapter. And so he knew like I meant
What you
what
mean?
I was saying
Yeah.
about that. So being able to still touch people's lives, just through the organization and being available as a role model of sorts and a tangible inspiration. I think that has been a big part of me being in the organization, and as we like to bridge build. So that's always been our thing.
I'm gonna say a word, Terrence, and I just want you to give me the first thoughts that come to mind to you, man.
Okay.
Brotherhood. What does that mean? You being a man of Omega, right? You being your brother being 9 years older than you. The men that showed you certain things, right? It's a brotherhood, right? And there's always support that is needed. But when I say brotherhood, what does it mean to you?
Brotherhood to me means love.
Mm.
It means safety.
Mm.
So if I can be vulnerable with you, if you can tell me you prayed for me, or just shoot me a text, you're thinking about me, that's a little push that'll get me through whatever day I'm having.
Wow.
And from that, bonds are made stronger, they're fortified. And so that's the biggest thing is not about, it's about who's willing to stand in the gap for you, who's willing to intercede, who's able to come to your defense if you get in a situation, and then hold you accountable when it's just you two or the group of you.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to let nothing happen to you, but you shouldn't have done that to put us in this situation. That sort of thing. So that's what I hear when I hear brotherhood. I hear safety.
Man, I feel like we're about to have a church service, man. That's a great breakdown, man. Thanks for that. Let's get back on the track real quick, Terrence, because obviously you had a bunch of NCAA titles, indoors and outdoors. What was the one that meant the most to you during your time in college? Obviously, everyone is different experiences, and it means different years. But what was the one that said, you know what, I think that I can compete with the best in the world?
What was that one? It's odd that we talk about it because and see, this was the good thing about running under Coach Fry and being a pretty popular athlete. Like, Coach will put you in some situations where you get some exposure.
What do you mean?
So I want to say maybe my second or third meet in college as a freshman was the Boston Indoor Invitational, which was on the USATF tour. And so I ran and I won that meet indoors in Boston. And that's what did it. For me. It was like, whoa, like, I just watched two of you guys in the World Championships last year. Now, granted, it's early. These guys just had a long season. They just trying to get tuned up. I don't know that at the time. I mean, I'm trying to get in what I can get in, Let me sucker punch them and run off. So that was my mindset. And so when I saw that, that's when I was like, okay, I can do this, and later on in the season, my freshman year, I vividly remember having a big breakthrough. So I set a personal best at the time. It was 13:32, and I got third place behind Allen Johnson and Dwayne Ross. And this was me at Clemson. And I got in third. And when I found out what I had run, I was, ecstatic, because I had run 13:20s in high school. Yeah. And so, the hurdles go 3 inches higher in college. And so to get to that point that early, I was I was elated. So, so to answer the question about belonging, it was pretty early my freshman year because I knew that I still had to develop. I knew I had experiences to gain. I had to grow. I had to get stronger, that sort of thing. And so that was that. But as far as my NCAA title, the first one always sticks out.
Yeah.
But I would say when I won the 60 meters my junior year, after winning the hurdles early that day or the day before. So I did the double. I won the 60-meter hurdles and then came back and won the 60-meter dash.
Sprinters couldn't tell you nothing.
At all. At all. Yeah. And so, you know, I was either strongly admired or strongly hated, you know, because of that. But hey.
Regardless, they were talking. It's interesting,
Right.
Terrence, because man, you've been so internally focused on the process, whether you knew it at the time or not. You were always just like, you know what, I need time here. I'm going to get faster. I'm going to get stronger. I'm going to get this. I'm going to get that. 1996, you saw the Olympic Games. You said at the next one, I'm going to be there. Right. So now we're at the 2000 Olympic Games in Sydney, Australia. And it seemed like everything kind of lined up for you on paper. It looks like this, right? You won NCAAs, indoors, outdoors. Then you went on to USA Championships. You got top 3 there and you made the team. So I want to ask you a loaded question and you can answer however you please. What did it feel like when you made the team, right? And then you get to the games. Was it everything that you thought it would feel like prior towards the final? And then once you answer those two, we'll get to that final part.
Okay. So making the team was probably the biggest, I can't even describe, like words can't describe what it felt like for me to make the team for several reasons. One, we were starting to go through some challenges at South Carolina with our dynamic, coach athlete dynamic. And I watched a lot of my teammates and training partners, teammates from college, not make the Olympic team. But they were young. They were all young. And I looked at people that I watched on TV who had looked at making the team for the first time, and this was like their 3rd or 4th attempt, and they get like 4th or 5th place. And so it was a myriad of thoughts and emotions going on. But and I tell this story when I tell my story that the guys, the veterans in the 110s were easing up at the line. They were cruising, sub 13.2. And my personal best at the time was 13.2. It was 13.28 at the time.
We gunning all the way through.
Right. My season's best at the time was 13.30. So, they're essentially 2/10 faster than what I am. And I had no idea of how I was going to level up to meet these expectations. And so it was pretty overwhelming. And I also tell this in my story. I went to Allen as we were walking to the competition track from the warm-up track. And I just told him how nervous I was. And he said, "Hey man, just treat it like practice," and that changed like everything at that point, because I knew I had put it down in practice. I knew I was always like on his hip in practice. And so I felt like, okay, I'm consistently on his hip. But when it's the finals and everything is on the line, you're not on Alan Johnson's hip. You know what I mean? Like, it's a totally different ball game.
Yeah.
So he crossed the line. It's 12.97. Mark Creer crossed the line at 13-11. And the crazy thing is, I had no idea that I had gotten third, but they knew on television I had gotten third once I saw the broadcast.
Yeah.
But we were still waiting, and it was a blanket finish. And so when my name got up there for third and I ran 13-19, I was beyond it was like an out of body experience. Because I just said that I wanted to do this
4 years
and
prior.
So right. And so making the team was like a 10-layer cake. Making the finals was the icing on that cake. And that medal was just like the sparkles on the candles that wouldn't blow out. It was that sort of thing. And so going to Sydney, of course, it was surreal because we're in a whole nother part of the planet, and the culture is different and the temperature is cool. And you are now at the big show that you said you wanted to be at 4 years prior. And I took everything in. I saw boxing. I don't think I went to swimming, but I did go see some boxing matches and saw the men's basketball team.
Yeah.
And that sort of thing. And just really experienced what I could of Australia, because that was before 9/11. So, the security wasn't as strict at the time. Of course, we had it in the village, but prior to, post 9/11, it was, dramatically different.
Yeah.
So just being there and qualifying through the rounds and having an opportunity to get further and further into it and making the final, I felt as if I know I can get fourth, because the way I've competed, I've been top 3 at a lot of these meets in Europe.
Yeah.
But I know there are 3 guys that are defending Olympic medalists, and there is the defending world champion and world number 1 at the time, who was really on a roll. And I would see myself I would get second and third at a lot of these meets. And so I said, if somebody has a bad night, I can get a bronze, And so that was kind of my mindset coming in. And the gun goes off. Well, going back to walking out of the tunnel prior to the finals, that's when it all hit me. Because we're walking out of the tunnel and you see the stadium open up a little bit more with each step.
Cameras, lights, screaming,
right.
USA flag.
And so Kathy Freeman had just won the 400 meters, which was Australia's countrywoman.
Yeah.
So they were nuts. I mean, you couldn't hear. That's how loud it was in there. And so coming down the tunnel, walking onto the track, that's just what I thought about. And we knew the moment was real once they did all the introductions and you could hear a pin drop in the stadium. You knew that this was the moment, the defining moment.
As someone who said, 4 years ago, I want to be here, and now you're here, and now your name is announced, right? This young man from Decatur, Georgia, is finally here. What you said, man. Obviously you were ready for the moment, right? But were you ready for the moment? You know what I'm saying? Like mentally, what was going through your head at that time? Were you just like, oh crap, this race is about to start. Am I really ready here?
I think some of everything kind of flashed. I felt like I was ready. It was more or less, I felt so supercharged with emotion and energy because of where I was at the moment. And my thought was, just don't hit the first hurdle.
Yeah.
That was it. And see, at that time, everybody could be awarded a false start. So the gun could go off, and it could be a legit gun on the first one, or it could be legit on the 9th one. And so we had to kind of deal with that as well. And so the gun goes off the first time, it's a false start. And so that really wasn't a good one for me. And so I was kind of glad we got that one out of the way. But at the same time, I just felt so exhausted. And all I took was one hurdle because of the magnitude of the moment. And the gun goes off again, and I literally like run for my life. Like I know where we are. And I have Anir Garcia in lane 3 who would eventually be the Olympic champion. He was the world number 1 at the time. And then I had Allen in lane 5 and then Mark Creer in lane 6. So I'm in 4th most of the race, but I'm fighting, I'm scrapping, I'm giving it all that I have. And so Mark and Allen, I think they were kind of banging hurdles a little bit.
Yeah.
They were really at it. And I go from 4th to 2nd, I think between hurdle 8 and hurdle 9, or hurdle 9 and hurdle 10, and just run like crazy to the finish line. And when I looked up, I saw that Garcia's name was first, and then I was 2nd with another PB. And I was kind of delirious, like looking up, like I'm another out of body experience. And for me to get silver when I felt like bronze would have been the major come up.
Yeah.
It to me, it just, that part of the story just could not have gotten any better, for me. And I knew at that point in time, things could change back on the home front.
I was watching it the other day, and I could see the excitement in your face because when Anir won, you went over to him and was hugging him, and and then you started to realize, oh wow, right. When you got home, what was that like?
So I had like a caravan waiting at the airport when I got home.
Oh man.
All of my mom's friends and people from the church and my school and that sort of thing. They all gave me like this little indoor parade at the airport. And it was cool. It was really cool. And the first thing that I did was hop, because they had a limousine for me, hopped in a limousine and went to watch my high school play in their football game that they had. And I lifted my medal up, and the marching band played the Olympic theme song.
Wow.
And so that was a major, major moment for me. So coming home was awesome. So much love, so many people giving their well wishes and their thoughts. And I mean, just to be in that moment,
3 years later, right? We back. We got to go at it again, right? World Championships. You came back. You got a silver as well too. Then the next year we go back, and now we're at another Olympic Games, and you got 2nd at this game as well too. But now the stakes is a little bit different. You've been there once before, Terrence, right? You shocked the people. You probably shocked yourself. But now there's certain expectations that probably you, your coach, and everybody else kind of has for you now. Now you're not the rookie. You're the person who you got to watch out for this guy. What was the preparation leading into those games like? And when you got there, did you expect to medal this time around, right? Because you've done it before. Last game you said, if I can get 4th, that's perfect. But we've been there. We've done that now. What was it like for this games? And which one was more special for you, would you say?
So this was exactly the mindset. We've been there. We've done that. It's time to handle business. The goal was to get gold. And so at this point, I'm back with my high school coach training. And so we had a long off season. We worked on strength. We worked on base training, that sort of thing. And I was just a little bit flat, most of the year. We didn't really do the speed work like we needed.
Yeah.
It came at the perfect time, like right before the Olympic trials.
Yeah.
And I kind of had some issues with tendonitis in my knee. And so I was a little banged up, but I was starting to freshen up for the games. And that's when they came with the one race for 4 straight day format for the hurdlers. And it sucked,
Yeah.
And so I put my best foot forward for the final, but the semifinal day is when I felt my best. And that was day number 3. And we coming back for day number 4. And it was like, okay, can I get my body up to do this again? And so being able to rise to the moment was huge for me. But I was disappointed. I was disappointed that I didn't compete at the level that I felt I should have competed in the final. I think it was hurdle 6 pretty bad. And that threw me just out of contention altogether, I thought. And so when I crossed the line and I saw that I had gotten another silver, it was like, okay, well, because at this point I thought I had gotten 5th. It was just really thrown off. And so I was a little disappointed because I felt like I was better than how I performed. And I know there's a difference in how athletes are treated who get the gold and who get the silver. It's a little bit different there. And so, and I understood that. So the silver lining was the fact that I medaled again.
Yeah.
Because it's a very difficult thing to do.
Yes.
And so I don't take for granted that I have medaled multiple times in an Olympic Games and that the medal was the exact same value. Yes, I wanted to step it up, but I didn't downgrade. And so that was the blessing in it all. And even if I had to be a 2-time Olympic medalist, I mean, that's a very, very rare group to be in.
Last few questions here, Terrence. I'm going to name 3 names again, and I just want you to give me a couple thoughts that come to mind. I believe, whether we call it a rivalry or someone calls it a rivalry, there are people that we compete against that ultimately make us better. First name I'm going to say is Alan Johnson. What comes to mind?
Mentor. He really kind of took me under his wing, and I saw how he prepared. And so it really confirmed what my high school coach said. It's not the will to win, it's the will to prepare to win. And Alan had an aura about him that he had this air that when it's on the line, you are going to get the very best version of Alan Johnson. When the chips are, when everything is on the line. And so I just carried that. I tried to personify that myself.
Now, this next guy is from a different country, but you probably raced him on the circuit a couple times. You raced him at your first Olympic Games, Anir Garcia. What comes to mind?
I would probably say a dog. This guy, like, just to understand their conditions in Cuba.
Yeah.
And just to know how driven he was. And for him to get 2 Olympic medals was huge as well. Okay, so quick story. We were in Japan when 9/11 happened. So we were there. We were like stuck.
Yeah.
We couldn't go anywhere. And so there was several days before the meet. And so everybody was just kind of hanging around. And anything that we did from a competitive standpoint, if it was basketball, if it was pool, if it was breakdancing, like literally it was breakdancing. It was breakdancing. If they were drinking, like he did whatever. I watched this guy. This was the last meet of the year. This was in September, okay? And in September, it's like, all right,
He
We
just
just want to
holding
get
on.
home.
He
It's
just holding
football
on.
season. You know what I mean? So we are done. We're done. Like we're done. And this guy's been drinking every day. And he comes out and he runs 13-1 in this meet. And I was just like, I can't believe this dude is just,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, shout out to Anir, man. Big time athlete, strong competitor, you know.
Last name, Li Zhang.
So anomaly is what I'll say. Um, this kid came on the scene in 2003, I want to say, or 2002. And in 2003, he got bronze, you know, in the world championships. And then 2004, he's a whole nother, you know, caliber of athlete. I mean, he definitely had the potential. I mean, he was running 13-1 before he just really just took off. So it was there. Really consistent. The thing about Lou is once you get to like hurdle 7, 8, 9, and 10, you kind of struggle to keep your hips up in between. And he didn't have that struggle. He knew how to keep the momentum going and keep his hips up. And so he was extremely tough to beat on a consistent basis. However, let me say, I did get him the last 2 times that we raced.
Hey,
and one was in his hometown. So
that counts for like 10 wins.
So, you know, he beat me more than I beat him, but I think I gut punched him the hardest. So I'll be satisfied with that one.
Last 2 questions, Terrence. You know, I don't think many people, maybe this generation, don't know as much that you were one of the first, if not the first, to wear your own apparel, right? How'd you go about that, right? Like where did that come from? Because, you know, so many times, you know, we turn on the TV and we see the New Balance outfit, the Nike outfit, the Adidas outfit, right? But there's also a lot that comes with it too. Sometimes they're just on a gear deal. They're not necessarily making money. It's just on a gear deal. But why was it important for you to make that transition to run your own stuff? Because that is not only belief, that's courage as well too.
So for me, I was with Mizuno from 2000 to 2008. And I guess after I got injured at the 2008 games, they had already seen me make, you know, silver after silver. And I guess they felt like at 29, that was probably my last time being able to be as effective. And so what they started to do was push toward distance. So I'm out of a contract at this point. And so the big question was, is Terrence healthy? Because what everybody remembers from 2008 was I pulled up at the games.
Yeah.
Little did they know, like at the games, I was in 12-7 shape because that's what we had worked on. And, you know, it was like a freak occurrence. So 2009, I had to kind of prove myself. My goal was to kind of unveil my apparel like after retirement. That was the goal. And so because nobody came with anything that would allow me to sustain kind of what I had built up for myself, I just said, you know, I'm gonna rock my own stuff. And so I'm gonna do what I know I can do from that standpoint, from a design and a creativity standpoint. And so that's what I did. And so the first couple of uniforms were kind of like, okay. And then it got better as I went along and was able to team up with the right team to get my stuff done just like I wanted it. But
did you catch a lot of slack from that, Terrence? Like, did people look at you a little differently? Like, man, what's this guy doing?
Yeah, I mean, constantly, anytime you stand out, you know, it draws that type of attention. but I was still winning.
Mm.
I was still winning. As a matter of fact, that year I had almost broken the American record in the indoor hurdles that year. And so that made it really good for me because I had the opportunity to wear my brand while I was having such a successful season.
Yeah.
And so it helped out a great deal. And so, yeah, that's what kind of spearheaded it all. It was the idea came from looking for a way to brand track athletes beyond the track. And I talked with one of the top people from our NGB, and I could tell from the conversation he heard it, but he really wasn't
Listening.
feeling it. And so I was like, okay, you know what? I'm gonna do this myself. And so that's what I did. And that's how we got the shoe covers and all of the different little things. So I could literally match from head to toe.
I remember when I saw it, I'm like, man, how do I get a pair of these? His brother's cold with it, man. So I appreciated it. And I know many others did as well too. Last question that I have for you, Terrence, and it's a bit of a loaded question because it comes with a lot of emotion with it as well too. 2021 during the pandemic, right? You were elected into the National Track and Field Hall of Fame. Everything that you kind of said that you wanted to do, you were able to accomplish. Right, the process behind it, you were able to do it regardless of how long it took, but it didn't really take that long, right? Because God gave you this skill set, but this mind frame that helps you get there. But throughout that whole process, Terrence, every day isn't always perfect. It's not always smooth sailing. There's injuries that you were battling with. There's people who start to doubt. There's people who believed one time and then now they don't. A lot of uncertainty. A lot of things that you're not sure how it's going to play out. So when you were elected, you got the call, you got the news, man, sum up, how did it make you feel? Because there's a lot to it, but how did it make you feel? And what do you think it does for people? Because I've always said hope needs to be seen and shown.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a major statement there. I could exhale, I guess.
I understand that completely. Yeah. I get that.
I could exhale because I looked on YouTube and I was voted as one of the top 10 most underrated track athletes, of our time. And I know I had a lot of consistency. I felt like there should have been probably about 3 more goals than I got, but that's the competitiveness. What's the point of going out there if you're not trying to go all the way?
Yeah.
And so the thing that it did was, okay, so what I did and what I was able to accomplish did matter. Mm-hmm. It did shed some light on my contribution to the sport. And that's the thing. And so initially, when you were coming with the question, before I knew what it was, the 2 words that came to mind, if I were to share with anyone, is keep going. Just keep going. A race that has never been finished has never been won, regardless of what place you come in.
Yeah.
Just keep going. When you feel like you want to give up, when you feel like the worst is bound to happen, running from it will not save you. See it through. You have to do that,
Terrence, man, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I really enjoyed the conversation, man. As we close out, what is the best way for people to stay in touch with you? But I also want to ask, what is there a scripture that uplifts you when you feel exactly like how you said, man, to keep going. Is there something of that for you? And then let us know the best way to keep in touch with you for the audience.
So really quickly, the best way to get in contact with me would be from Instagram, which is Trammell Athletics. Also have a Hall of Fame hurdler on Instagram, and Twitter kind of screwed up my handle. It was supposed to be Hall of Fame hurdler, but they left out Hall of, and so it's just Fame hurdler. uh, and Trammell Athletics. You can catch me on Trammell Athletics on all platforms, pretty much. And a scripture that when I'm down, Jeremiah 29:11 is always a good one. You know, I know the plans that I have for you, plans to prosper you and
give you hope and future. Come on now.
Yeah. So that's that. And I have to tell myself this at times, because the saying is true that God didn't bring us this far to leave us. You know, we are a royal priesthood. And if the Messiah came down and was faced with all types of hatred and scrutiny, how are we different from that? And so, you know, we're in a society now where likes mean so much to us. We want people outside, you know, that gives us our validation. And so we live for likes. And the biggest thing that you have to do is not only like, but love yourself, and let those things be, let the likes from the outside be the fruit that you liking and loving yourself on the inside bear. And it can be tough because we're force fed a lot of these things.
Yeah.
And so you gravitate toward what you see. And so, you know, with that being the case, love yourself. Yeah. Love yourself. Start off there. And I'm not saying from a self-aggrandizing view, but many of us look at ourselves from a perspective of, I'm not good enough. Am I good enough? Oh, it'll never happen. You know, you're speaking that doom over your life. So that's what I would say. Love yourself. Be patient with yourself. Give yourself a little bit of leeway. You know, God loves you regardless. He just wants you to know that. He just wants you to know that by the way you treat yourself and the way you treat others. So, you know that list, they said you top 10 underrated. Well, they switch it to top 5 most respected. You're definitely on that list, man. So I appreciate your time, man. I appreciate you sharing everything with us today. And thanks again, man. Have a great rest of your day, man. We'll be in touch soon. You too, Akeem. Thanks.
Take care.